Just yesterday, New York City officials approved a new, get this, culturally responsive education policy that requires schools to stop the practices that lead to predictable outcomes of success or failure for historically marginalized students, despite the fact that most NYC students aren't proficient in reading or math. Now, here to make sense of all of this is Dinesh D'Souza, a conservative, author, filmmaker. Dinesh, when you dig down about what culturally responsive education means, you find out that it's the same liberal educrat gobbledygook that's been confusing students and keeping them stuck for decades now.
Yeah, it's not really education at all. It's the politics of victimology. The idea here is to reconcile minority students to their poor performance, and instead of trying to improve the performance, to locate a person to blame for it, namely the system or the white man. So this is actually a recipe for, it's not a recipe for creating educated students. It's not a recipe for preparing you to balance a checkbook or get a job or start a business. It might be a recipe if you want to go to work for Antifa or Black Lives Matter, but it limits your occupational choices really to those two categories.
Right. Well, here's the proficiency chart for New York City, Dinesh. Now, check it out. Math. Well, you see grade 4, 26% are at or above proficient. Grade 8 goes up to a whopping 27%. Reading, 26. Grade 8, 27. Science, wow. Grade 4, only 18% of proficient or above. Grade 8, 13%. Yet, I just want to keep going back to culturally responsive because this reminds me of, back in our alma mater in the 80s. This concept started trickling in back then. This is what it says. It said that the one-page definition of culturally responsive says students' varied perspectives, whether tied to nationality, religion, race, or other backgrounds, should be seen as essential assets. It also requires schools to, quote, foster critical consciousness, Dinesh, about historical and contemporary forms of bias and suppression. That's the definition of culturally responsible, which means the Chinese students, their parents, protested at a meeting because they're like, wait, we don't get translators. Why are the Spanish kids getting translators? We're not getting translators. So everybody's at each other's throat now.
Yeah, this is, the New York public schools are among the most diverse in the world. You don't have to teach the kids about diversity. They are diverse. This would be like having a program to teach me about being Indian. You don't need to do that. The broader meaning of this, I think, is quite startling. Trump attacked these Democratic Party-run cities as being crime-infested, drug-infested, rat-infested, but I think he, in a way, understated the case. If I were a poor kid in a slum, I would rather choose to be in a slum in Mumbai or in one of the favelas in Brazil than in Baltimore or New York City. Now, why is that? Because even in Mumbai, I get a good education. I have a strong, intact family. If you transplant me out of poverty and put me into a place where I have opportunity, I can thrive. The problem for the poor kids in Baltimore and New York is they're not even being prepared with the basic skills for life. So even if opportunity comes their way, they don't know what to do with it. They don't have the ability to perform at the jobs that they're not being educated for. So this is a real disaster in the making.
Oh, so we're teaching them to be professional agitators or community activists or protesters or members of whatever group happens to be vogue at the moment. But we're not really giving them the skills in science or math or writing that would actually make them more productive and probably can make more money in society. Dinesh, by the way, the president got a lot of heat because there was a tweet he sent out about Elijah Cummings, the robbery of his home. Really bad news, he said, in Baltimore, house of Cummings was robbed. Too bad. Today he said that, that wasn't a wisecrack. He said I just basically reported what was in the news. So the media hopped on that and pestered him about that at his helicopter spray today. And he said, I was just basically repeating what everyone else had said. But they're not letting this Elijah Cummings things go.
Well, I think, Trump's thing was taken as being a kind of snarky chuckle at Cummings' fate. But there's a broader point here, and that is that usually these politicians can pursue these policies that make life miserable for other people, make these neighborhoods extremely dangerous, but they themselves live in gated communities where they're immune from the consequences of their own policies. Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure, doesn't have to live with homeless people at her door in San Francisco, for example. And generally, neither would Elijah Cummings. So I think this is actually kind of an interesting case where the crime in Baltimore actually found its way to Elijah Cummings' own door.